Hi, I'm Cathy from Bishopstone Yarns podcast, and this is episode 7. This episode is a sit and spin episode, and so I hope that you will take the time out to sit down with me, enjoy some crafting, take some time and relax, just especially in these times, to take a little bit of time for yourself to enjoy whatever it is you're making, whether it's spinning, knitting, crocheting or sewing, whatever you are doing. Grab a drink, sit down, and we can have a bit of relaxing time together. So I'm Cathy and I am Bishopstone Yarns. You can find me as Bishopstone Yarns on Facebook, as Bishopstone Yarns on Instagram, and on Ravelry you can find me as Bishopstone. So I do both a knitting podcast and I'll be doing a sit and spin podcast as well for those who want to just sit down and relax and enjoy a bit of quiet time while they're making. And if you are interested in my knitting podcast, go and have a look at some of my other episodes where I talk about my knitting and my spinning and my sewing and anything else that I like to make and do. If you're a returning viewer, hi, it's great to see you again, and it's always nice to spend some time with you. If you've just found this podcast, welcome. It's great to have you here. I hope you enjoy your time here with me. And if you like the podcast, give it a thumbs up and subscribe, because that helps me in this little area of the YouTubes. And then we can spend some time together. I love it when people leave comments. And I had a lovely comment last time from a lady who's using her drop spindle to spin up some silk as well. So it'll be interesting to hear how she's going, how far she's got, and what she's planning to do with her silk when she finishes. So at the moment, last time I was spinning on the podcast, I was spinning this kind of purple colourway. So this is 100% silk. And then I found this kind of singles that I already had on a bobbin. And I'm pretty sure this one's an alpaca. And so I'm going to ply these two together. And can't even show. Anyway, these are the two that I'm going to ply together. Now, to ply these together, I have this little thing here, which is called a lazy Kate. And what we do is we pop one of the singles here and the other single I will put down here. Now, I am aware that there appears to be quite a bit more of the purple silk than there is of the alpaca. I'm just going to ply them together and see how far it goes. If I run out of the alpaca, I'll either have a look through my stash and see if I can find some more, or I'll just use something else to put it together. So I just make sure that the ends from these bobbins are both coming out on the same direction. So they're both coming over and out just makes it so much easier to ply together when they're both coming in the same direction. Now usually I would put this a little bit further behind me. I've got an empty bobbin here, which I will be moving my wheel a bit closer to me. So I have my empty bobbin, which I'll then just pop onto my wheel. This is my Major Craft Rose, which I've had for quite a while. It's a great wheel for, it's quite nice and light and it folds up. You can, maybe you can see it or not, but it folds in half, so it's easy to move around, to take in the car, to take out to spinning groups, and I just find it quite a good wheel in terms of for mobility. Now I've got my leader on here. When I ply, of course, I ply the opposite way to the way that you've spun the singles. So I'm going to attach my I've got my 2 singles here. I just tie a knot to start everything off. And then I just pop my hand in between the 2 singles just to keep good tension. So remembering to go in the opposite way to the ply of the singles, and then I'm off and away. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how this colourway turns out. I had originally thought about putting a charcoal, like a darker grey kind of colourway with the purple. But since I didn't have a dark charcoal, or not too dark, I mean I didn't want a black, but I thought a nice grey would have been nice, but since I didn't have a grey, I thought I would just go with what I had. My plans for this, and I don't always have a plan for what I'm going to use my yarn for while I'm spinning, but I'm hoping, actually I think I'll use this for a shawl, because I love the colour of the silk, and plus the softness of the alpaca, and hopefully once I wash this yarn it will bloom up a bit, so it'll kind of become a bit fluffier and give me quite a nice little halo, which will be lovely and soft against the skin, which is always a really good thing to do when when you're making a shawl, because you want to have something that you can kind of snuggle into, wrap around your neck and keep you nice and warm. So I don't know how well the actual spinning itself is showing up against the door here, but hopefully you can see it enough. Hope you've got yourself nice and comfortable and enjoying whatever it is you're making. I'm just wondering whether or not my camera is going to end up moving, because my cat Tig has just decided to go up and sit on the table behind the camera, which is always the way. He was very happily asleep upstairs on his chair. He has a chair that he likes to sit on upstairs, where he can look out the window and see what's happening around in the yard. And so much so that I even made him his own little quilt to go on the chair, because he was dropping a lot of fur. It's a white chair, and he was dropping a lot of fur all over the chair. So I thought I'd make him a little quilt, put it on the chair, and hopefully then it'd be a lot easier to clean. And he seems to like it quite a lot. He spends quite a bit of time up there, and seems to enjoy his little quilt. But we'll see how we go. Hopefully he won't knock the camera at all. So I hope everyone's doing well. I hope everyone is finding some time to sit back and relax, find some time each day to have some time for yourself and to do something that you enjoy doing and something that helps you relax. I know that a lot of people are saying that they seem to be finding it quite difficult at the moment to craft or to actually get into the rhythm of crafting. And I guess there's a lot happening in the world at the moment. I mean, there's always a lot happening in the world, but I think at the moment there's a lot of very unusual things happening, things that we're not used to, and things that we all of a sudden have to deal with and have to, even if we don't really think about them, they're still there in the back of our minds. I know, I mean, I'm a person who likes to listen to the news, and I must admit I have found it quite difficult listening to the news, listening over and over to the news, and there are so many sad and harrowing stories, really. And I find as I get older, I become a little bit more emotional as well. I mean, as much as I want to listen to the news and I want to hear what's going on, there are times when I feel like I can't hear another story. I need to just turn the TV off. I have to turn the news off. I can't listen, not because I don't want to know or not because I am not interested. It's just that I think we all come to a point where we become a bit overloaded and emotionally overloaded. And I guess there's also that feeling of we're so far away from so many things that are happening in the world. It's really hard to know what you can do to actually help. It's been absolutely amazing looking at the knitting community and a lot of the fantastic fundraising and some of the absolutely fantastic knitting, especially a lot of blue and yellow knitting that's going on around the world in support of Ukraine. I mean, Australia has had its floods as well, and so there's been a lot of donations towards the flood victims, people who've lost their houses and lost everything in the floods. And of course, your heart also goes out to those people who have died in the floods. And so there's it's almost as if there isn't a time to breathe yet. We can't take that big kind of, it's all over, we're back to normal, because we're not. So I think it's really important at this time, at this stage, that we almost force ourselves to take some time out for ourselves, for our making and our craft and doing those things that give us joy. And I'm not really quite sure what the answer is for those people who are finding it difficult to find their creativity or to find enjoyment in those things like knitting and spinning and sewing that they have always found fun and enjoyment doing. I don't really know what the answer is in terms of how you go about finding that joy back, but hopefully people can. Hopefully it will return and people can have a little bit of relaxation and joy in their day. Yes. Well, today has been lovely weather. It's March here, and I don't think I told people, but I'm coming to you from Tasmania, which is the little island on the south of Australia. And so we're in autumn at the moment. The leaves are starting to turn. Not on all the trees, of course, because the gum trees, the eucalypts here, don't lose their leaves. I mean, some of them turn a reddy colour, and of course, some of them, you know, they do lose some leaves, but they don't. They're not deciduous, and so they don't become bare in winter. They still stay lovely and green. But the European trees around are starting to turn. We're getting some lovely yellow and reddy toned leaves around. We're lucky the days are still quite nice and warm. Today has been really lovely and sunny and warm. But then we usually have a few days of warm, and then it drops back down to a cool day. We might have a couple more warm days. But we haven't hit that really cold, wintry kind of weather yet. Even the evenings have still been quite mild. And so, it's been a nice time to enjoy the weather, to enjoy the sunshine, and for those of us who are lucky enough to live near the coast, it's a great time to enjoy walking along the beach and spending time around the water. There's where I live, there are quite a lot of surfers, so there's still a lot of people in the surf. The other day, all the young kids were out surfing, so they were doing their surfing training, and brings back memories, because my children used to do what's called, in Australia it's called nippers, where the young kids do surf life saving. They learn, they don't actually surf life save, but they learn the skills that will eventually, you know, lead to surf life saving. And they've got components where they have running races on the beaches called flags. They do swimming, and then they have like a little like a little soft top surfboard that they paddleboard that they paddle out and have little races on, things like that. So all the kids were down at the beach the other day having their practice and their races, and so that was lovely to see. It's always lovely to see the kids enjoying themselves down at the beach. It is quite a big part of Australian life, you know, for those people who are near the coast, is going to the beach and swimming, and kids learn to swim at school, so they all have swimming. Well, I shouldn't say all, but I think most schools have swimming lessons, and so it's a really nice time of the year. It's not too hot, but you can still go out and enjoy yourself, enjoy the beach, and enjoy being outside. And I guess in a few months' time, I won't be saying that. I'll probably be trying to find somewhere in the house that's nice and warm, where I can sit and spin and film while I talk to you. Well, I'd be really interested to hear what everyone else is up to, what everyone else is doing at the moment, whether you're in the Southern Hemisphere or the Northern Hemisphere, because of course people in the Northern Hemisphere they're in spring, so I'm so jealous, because everything's coming back to life in the garden. They've got all their bulbs are starting to come out, all the new growth on the trees, and the weather's starting to warm up, and whereas we're going into sweater weather. So that will be good. And hopefully, not just sweater weather, hopefully shawl weather. In the past I have knitted a few shawls, but this year I'm hoping to knit a couple that I can use for winter. I'll have to get a bit of a hurry on and start knitting them quite soon. Yes, so I'd like to have a few hand knitted shawls that I can use during winter, and then I can kind of wear them when I go outside, go out with the dog, go walking with my dog, and keep them nice and warm. And actually they're quite good as well in that kind of interim time, isn't it, when it's kind of not really cold enough to put the heater on, but it's still quite cool, so putting a shawl on is a great way to keep nice and warm and enjoy the weather. So I'm just wondering how, actually I'm quite happy with how this is looking at the moment. I'll take some close-up shots of it later, so you'll be able to have a look and see the colourway. It's actually quite similar in a way to a jumper that I had knitted previously with I think it was alpaca and a wool, one single of wool, one single of alpaca, and yeah, I think it's got quite a similar. That jumper though had more of the kind of yellows and oranges and browns in it, as opposed to this one being the pinks and the purples. Yes. Well, the other day I went out and I bought a spinning control, well, actually, what do you call it? A little yarn gauge, so I can use on my spinning, which I've actually wanted for a really long time. So I'm happy that I've finally got round to getting one of those, and I was able to buy it locally, which is always nicer and a lot easier than trying to order something from overseas. And if you watch my next podcast, I'll tell you, I'll be discussing what I've been buying. I don't usually go out and buy a lot of yarn or supplies. But there was something special happening, and so I decided to go out and buy some things. Yes, so you have to have a look at episode 8, and you'll hear all about that. Now, I'm not quite sure how much of this I'll get done, especially at the moment, but we'll see how far we get through this and how far along I get. Hopefully, of course, by the next Sit and Spin podcast, I'll be able to show you the finished yarn. Hopefully I'll have it all skeined up and washed and yeah, ready to use. Then I'll just have to find a shawl pattern to use for it. which I always find quite difficult, that whole thing of going on Ravelry and choosing a pattern is never as easy as I think it's going to be. I always seem to go on there and think, I'll just quickly go on, I will find a pattern, I'll put in the parameters and I'll put down, you know, the type of yarn I want to use, the type of project I'm looking for, but there always end up so many options that I usually find it quite difficult to come up with a choice, because there are so many that I like, and then I get waylaid on ones that aren't the right, don't use the right yarn, but then I still really like them. Then I want to think about those, and then I want to think, do I have something in my stash that I could make that, which is not the reason that I went on there in the first place. But that is also the joy of going on Ravelry and having so many patterns available in one spot. I think, yeah, I try to remember back to a time before I used to use Ravelry, and I mean, I still have a lot of patterns in my studio. I have a lot of printed out patterns, and I don't have as many patterns in books now, but I do have a lot of patterns, and a lot of patterns that have been sitting on my shelf, in a queue on my shelf for a very long time, as well as having a long queue on my Ravelry page as well. So maybe that's the time, maybe 2022 is a time for me to go and revisit some of those patterns and maybe try and start making some of those, or making sure that I have the yarn to make some of those. I do know I've got quite a few patterns that are in 10-ply, and I, generally speaking, probably I spin around about a 5-ply. That's my kind of, let's say, default spinning. So I might have to make a little project where I set out to spin a 10-ply quantity of jumper worth yarn, so that I can knit some of these jumpers that I have in my queue. Otherwise they're going to be sitting there for such a long time. I guess the other option is I could just spin 5-ply and hold 2 5-plies together. I don't know that that always works exactly the same as a 10-ply. Kind of depends on how you spin it, and how those two yarns react, if when you wash them, if they're going to bloom quite a bit or puff up quite a bit, then I guess you're going to end up with something that's bigger than a 10-ply. Yeah, I'm not sure. Or maybe I should try a 3-ply, and yeah, I might have to start doing some swatching with my spinning and work out what I can get that might be close to a 10-ply. Actually, it'd be quite good if I could do 3-ply together, because it gives you a nice rounded yarn, and they're, yeah, it's just a really nice looking yarn when you've got more than 2 plies spun together, giving you a really lovely rounded yarn. Yes, maybe that's what I should do. All these things that I could put on my queue of things that I should do, but it's finding the time, and finding time to do other things, of course, in life as well. As much as I would probably spend all my time just knitting and spinning and sewing and doing crafty stuff, there are other things in life we have to do as well. So, yes. Yes, we have to fit it all in, don't we? So for the moment, I might just stop here for the moment with my plying, and I'll take some more video and show you a few different angles of my spinning and a little bit more of the yarn that I'm making, and hopefully you've had a nice time being able to sit back and relax and enjoy what you're doing. It's been so good to spend some time with you, to be able to sit back and just take this time for ourselves and do something that we enjoy. Even if that is just sitting down, having a cup of tea and not really doing anything. Because sometimes even just sitting doing nothing is good for us. Especially if it's spring where you are and you've got flowers and new growth everywhere, or even if you're in the Southern Hemisphere and you've got the beautiful changing of the leaves around you. There's so much for us to be happy and grateful for, that we need to take those moments to remind ourselves as well how lucky we are, and that we can find joy and some sort of peace and enjoyment in what's happening around us. It may not always seem like that, but it's a nice thing to think about, I think. Well, thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed your time, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Remember, if you like this podcast, give me the thumbs up, subscribe, because that helps me in this little area of the YouTubes, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you. Bye.